Hi, I'm Rick Malthaner, VP of Tonic Channel, and I'm here today with Tyler Young, who is our CEO, and with Jim Roddy, who is the CEO of the Retail Solution Providers Association, the RSPA. Welcome, Jim.
Rick, great to be here. Tyler, great to see you again as well.
Likewise, we're really glad you came in for this.
Thanks for having me.
Jim, can you tell me a little bit about when you took over the role of CEO of the RSPA?
Yeah, so January 2022 is when John Kirk, the prior CEO, retired, and so I moved into that role as president and CEO. But I've been involved with the association since a volunteer as 2006. Then I came on board full-time in 2019 as the VP of marketing. So been involved with the association a long time. And for those who don't know, the RSPA, premier community of value-added resellers, software providers, payment companies, distributors, hardware companies serving the retail IT industry. So we serve retail, hospitality, and grocery are the main verticals. And so we have about 750 member companies, most of them in the US and Canada, but some all around the world.
That's great. One thing we'll be talking today a little bit about is how the landscape of the organization has changed, right? I've been in the organization since about 2004. Okay. And so we go way back in this world. And I think we've seen several revolutions, I think, in that time frame.
For sure. Yeah, it's gone from cash registers to a full technology association. That's for sure.
I think one thing that maybe people don't know, and maybe it's going back a little bit too far, but this might be a little cool history, is that it was originally made up of two different organizations, correct, that came together?
That's right. So it was founded 76 years ago. It was the ICRDA, Independent Cash Register Dealers Association. And so those were folks that actually came out of a lawsuit from NCR. I passed the NCR headquarters on the way in here to the studio in Atlanta. And so it was the dealers versus NCR. And so the dealers got together and had that independent group. And then later there's a group called the SDA, Systems Dealers Association. They ended up merging instead of, working against each other. They operated for a few years. This is before branding. They were the ICRDA/SDA, did that for a few years, and then merged to be the RSPA, again, Retail Solution Providers Association.
What would you say is the overarching goal of the RSPA for its members?
Our mission, we say we accelerate the success of our members in the retail technology ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. And so we talk about when you have an association, you can just have a group where it almost seems like it's a cocktail party. A bunch of people are friends and they get together and it's fun and you get to know each other and then you go back home and do whatever. But we don't want to be that kind of association. We're looking to attract growth-oriented organizations. And so the way that what we want to do is have them not just come to get together and know each other, but help each other get better and better. I love how iron sharpens iron. And that's really something that we've seen in the association. And a big thing that we've seen is the knowledge and connections are not two separate things. A lot of times you connect with somebody and you get the knowledge from them, or somebody is up on stage providing knowledge and that leads you to connect with them. So it really works together. If we get the right mix of solution providers together, they just make each other better and better all the time. So that's what we talk about all the time. Like, is this interesting? Is it fun? Is it novel? Yeah, but does it actually accelerate the success of our members? And that's the thing that we want to do. We focus on those things that our members tell us are leading them to more sales, more profits, expanding their technologies, and really getting better is what they do. Again, we've been around 76 years. If our members are doing the same thing as they were 76 years ago, there'd be no association. If they're doing the same thing they were doing 15 years ago, there'd be no association. It'd be a very, very small organization. So we know technology changes. We've got to stay at least a step or two ahead of it.
To stay ahead of it, you lean on to other members, is what I just heard. You lean on the other members to communicate with each other and not just try and be the source of knowledge.
That's correct. So the thing that I've always said, so I play a role in the organization beyond CEO. I help produce reports. I do podcasts like this. I do blog posts and things of that nature. But I always say I'm not coming up from the angle of Jimmy's a genius. Like, I know all this stuff. Let me impart my wisdom upon you. My job, the job of our group, is to share collective wisdom, right? And so if we pull all that knowledge together, we can go and either redirect it ourselves and say, here's what we're hearing from our members, or get our members to talk talk amongst themselves with each other, talk to our other members. And that is really the magic that makes the association work. It used to be like you get a discount on this, you get a discount on this, or, like a different affinity programs. We've really seen over time that it's really getting that whole group together. They just make each other better and better. So our job is continue to grow that group, right? We have about 750 member organizations right now, but to grow it in our niche, right? It's not just a matter of adding on new companies. It's new companies who, again, are growth oriented and high initiative and focusing on those niche vertical markets. Even if they're a step outside from a traditional technology standpoint, that makes the core group even better because it stretches them a little bit more. And then the outside folks, or the new members, they learn about the core point of sale technology and provide the whole solution. So it's been really interesting as we learn about it. Like our leadership team the past 2 years, we keep saying we need to try to understand the business better. We need to understand our community better. And after 24 months, that's, I think, the biggest thing that we've seen is it's not one individual program. It's the right mix of folks, getting them to engage with one another. That's a secret, not just for our association. It makes all those businesses better as well, instead of operating in a silo or on your own island.
Well, that's what we're here to do today, right? Share that information. I'm excited because I haven't been in the space as long as you guys. You've been in it since 2004. Did you say 2006?
2006, yep.
2006. And I'm looking forward to covering topics that are valuable to the members and hear about your knowledge. And Rick, I don't know if everybody knows you, but you have a lot of knowledge. I've known Rick now for about a year, and I've learned a lot, needless to say. So I look forward to sharing it.
Yeah, many years in this gig. The one thing I would ask, based on what you alluded to, that knowledge collective, one of the things that has tremendously impacted our industry from a VAR standpoint, if you go back about 20 years, it's really the convergence of payments and point of sale that has been a huge change to the industry, especially for VARs who weren't in payments. You alluded to the ICRDA and the SDA. Those were true cash register and point of sale people. And when it got into the computer side of things, it was a slow roll in the beginning on payments, but then it happened very fast. So can you just speak to a little bit going in the Wayback Machine to 2004 in payments, and then how that's come along in the past maybe decade or so?
So the first industry event I ever attended was an RSPA Inspire conference. And so we were just there. We're recording this a few weeks after that event. But the first one I ever went to was 2006. I remember I'm in line for an excursion behind the Katz brothers, Jeff and Mark Katz. They were the founders of Mercury Payment Systems. And they were explaining to me exactly how the whole thing would work together with integrated payments and all that stuff. I remember looking at them and being like, okay, like good, like great. But it was so hard to grasp at that point because everything at that point was so analog. And I know a lot of the what were called dealers early on, now the resellers of the VARs, they didn't quite get it either because they were used to install hardware and software and services is where they make the money. But payments today, I'd say it cuts both ways. It has funded a lot of businesses in a huge way, and that's been amazing for their business. But you also have to make sure you don't get too reliant on just the residuals, because then you don't feel like you have to scramble and innovate anymore. And so the most successful VARs that we've seen are those who keep that entrepreneurial spirit, right? Even though I'm getting a ton of money from payments currently, what else can I do in order to shore up my business? Because they're always, I love the Jim Collins phrase, productive paranoia, right? It's always, hey, this could go away, this could change, or it might not be as lucrative as it is now. What am I going to do differently? And so I look at payments was the original recurring revenue. It was the original as a service for all these point of sale folks. And so they see the value of recurring revenue. And now they're looking, I shouldn't just say looking, a lot of them have embraced now, and they're way deep into offering a lot of services on a recurring basis. So again, there is the convergence. I know a lot of VARs, complain about payments because it's so complex, but the merchants, they're saving the merchants a lot of headaches because payments is so complex and working with all the technology. So that's, I guess, my take on the payment space today. It cuts both ways. You want to make sure you don't get too in a lifestyle business because the payments residuals are so great. But man, it could be really something that really vaults your business in a great way.
Yeah, I think something related to that, very similar, is the sort of the convergence or the VARs needing to become more of an MSP, right? There were managed services providers were out here in the industry and point of sale people were over here, but they started to understand as they got into those payments that they could start to offer other services, networking, security, voice over IP, those kind of things. And so how have you seen that affect the industry?
So this is where I go back even further than 2006. 2006 is when I started getting into the retail technology industry. But in 1998, I started with the Business Solutions magazine. And so that was a publication that covered, I always called it the two ends of the channel. There was the point of sale and data collection end of the channel. And then you had more of those managed services. It was security and folks who focused on healthcare and hospitals and attorneys' offices. And they had no real vertical focus. So they were MSPs. And then you had your point of sale people. They didn't even know each other existed, right? But over time, the MSPs looked and they're like, boy, what's this weird technology that these point of sale people are installing? The point of sale people are like, what do you even install? There's almost no hardware anymore. You're doing, monitoring. Like, how do you even make money at that? But now they certainly haven't fully converged, right? Because VoIP, those telephony and all that stuff, that's still for a lot of folks in the retail technology space. The most complex stuff is still a few steps away. But we've seen, in fact, we just did the Retail IT Channel KPI study 2024. It's in our 8th year of doing that. And we've seen the VARs who have added software and they now consider themselves hybrids, not just a VAR, not just a software company, an ISV VAR hybrid. They are getting the most of their revenue is coming from services, is what it is. So as the first year in the survey, we asked that question. The traditional VARs, almost half of them are getting more than half of their revenue from payments. But the ISV VAR hybrids, they're getting most of the revenue from services, but it's very much spread across services, software, and payments for those folks. So I'm glad payments has been a gateway in order for these, what used to be resellers are now VARs, are now very much MSPs, to have a really solid business model. In fact, a thriving business model.
VARs are new to residual income. It isn't something that they had a lot of. There was service fees, support fees, but payments brings in a lot of revenue. And a lot of VARs have experienced new highs for gross margin, net profits. How have you seen that impact the industry?
Yeah, so this is where I've been in this industry long enough. I can remember a meeting. It was before an RSPA Inspire event. It was the vendor working group, and they were talking about shifting to the as-a-service business model because people saw the MSPs and managed services providers doing that. And vendors and distributors are saying, who's going to hold the paper on the hardware? And there was all this stuff. There was no availability for the resellers to actually do that outside of payment. So I go all the way back to that. What I've seen today is the folks who you can't transition everything right off the bat to the as-a-service business model. Hardware is by far and away the most difficult thing to do unless you're selling a lower cost hardware. You work with a leasing company. That's one way to do it is to get the leasing thing. But we've put together a list over the years. This is getting back to earlier what I said in terms of where we pull together, share the collective wisdom of our members. We've put together a list. Folks can search for it right now. If you search Ultimate Recurring Revenue and RSPA, you'll see a list. I think it's now 48 different items that retail technology VARs are actually reselling today and getting recurring revenue from it. So the successful ones that we see, and I'm not saying this because this is our list, but they've told us, they get this list, they look at it and they see everything that they're doing on a recurring revenue basis. Then they look at the things that they're doing on a non-recurring revenue basis and they say, I should start transitioning some of those to recurring revenue. And they do those one or two at a time, like in a year or something like that. And then they see some things that they're doing for free and they're like, well, I can charge a little bit for that. And then they go and add that over time as well. And then once they shore that up, they'll look and say, what works for my organization? What works for my merchants? What would be the next one or two things that I can add? And they just have gone on this steady march where suddenly they're getting, I just talked to one the other day. He used to be 0 recurring revenue, and now he's like at 78% recurring revenue, and he's done that over a period of, I'd say, over half a decade. But he started that march and just kept moving and moving. And payments was the first one that he was doing, and he just keeps moving and moving through that. So that's the whole thing. This is a journey, right? This is not a sprint. But man, you want to triple the value of your business? You can do that in 5 or 6 years if you take that step-by-step approach from that standpoint. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
well,
how we've seen
it does.
folks do it.
And I would ask the follow-up question to it is how many people are entering the space? You guys are on the forefront of seeing new members. And if someone wants to get into the POS space, this is certainly the association to do it with. Mm-hmm. How is new membership looking for someone that wants to adopt this type of model? Because recurring income is what a lot of industries are pursuing, even Microsoft switching Word over, which has been a painful thing for a lot of us when you go through a lot of laptops.
Yep.
It's been nice since we go through a lot of laptops, but it was certainly hard to swallow having to pay a monthly fee. This is an industry with a lot of recurring revenue opportunities. You mentioned 48. Mm-hmm. How many people are getting into it, and do you think there's room for more?
There's definitely room for more. So I can tell you the last 2 fiscal years for the RSPA, the prior fiscal year, we added exactly 100 new members. Most of them are VARs, and then another group that we call DISDs, Direct Independent Software Developers. These are ISVs, but they don't have a channel. They're very niche oriented, or they're like an add-on to typical, point of sale software. That's another big group that we've had as well. We have 2 months to go in our current fiscal year. We've already hit 108 new members. And again, it is more in that VAR and the DISD category. So we have a lot of folks say, like, where are they coming from? Back in the old days, it used to be, I'm an NCR reseller, I'm a Micros reseller, I'm a, fill in the blank, Focus POS reseller. But now we see that folks are representing multiple, different software, or they're just crazy niche oriented. The one that I always tell is one that's called wash, dry, fold POS. Right? They don't just serve POS in general. They don't even just serve laundromats. They serve only wash, dry, fold laundromats. And their software is all for wash, dry, fold. So you can imagine they go to a trade show, you have wash, dry, fold POS, you run a wash, dry, fold laundromat. You're like, yes, like how could you not? Right? How could you not want that kind of software? That's where we see the growth is in these very niche, very special solution providers. But again, for VARs, your niche could be your region that you serve in, right? You have a vertical niche and then the regional niche. But the folks who are more sophisticated and they're the total solution provider, those are the folks that are bubbling up. I don't think anybody now says, I want to be a reseller when I grow up. They are software companies and they almost begrudgingly say, well, I got to put it on something. And so I guess I'll sell hardware with it. And I guess I should also sell some peripherals with it. And wow, I guess I should also offer security and other things with it. That's what we call the new VAR, is that direct independent software developer. They act very much like a VAR, but oftentimes they're bringing their own software to the table or a flavor of a current software is what they're doing. And again, that's the growth that we see. And we have a goal to get to 1,000 members and run that slow and steady march to do that, because the 100 plus new, it's not that they're replacing 100 that left, right? There is more churn in the software companies, but we're net gaining members every single year, and there's a lot more that we see on our prospect list. But again, they're not going to make massive headlines because they're in a small niche. They're not some massive companies necessarily.
Jim, over the past couple of decades in the VAR space, in the value-added reseller space, I think we've seen a few, Chicken Little, sky is falling. We're not going to be around 10 years from now. We've seen a lot of point-of-sale companies go direct to the market and try to service small, independent hospitality locations directly from afar. I'm a believer, and always have been, that the value-added reseller, the trusted advisor in the local market is important, because an SMB hospitality operator wants to be able to call somebody local. A printer's down, they want to be able to get service. We're committed to that space now, and honestly, I believe in the future of that, because the pendulum swung one way now where there's a lot of direct, but there's a lot of unhappy direct customers out there. And to me, it's blue ocean for these VARs to take that space back and say, we are your trusted advisor and we're going to do everything for you. And you have one phone number to call, that kind of thing. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So there's a principle that I learned, that there's no substitute for a competent person getting closer to a situation. And if that's true, and it's true in most situations, right, especially when something's complex or urgent or something like that, the local service is going to be there, or just being in the facility and being able to see things, as opposed to I'm trying to pack this up and ship it. Though the one thing we've realized talking with a lot of resellers, and I know one So a service we provide to our members is something that's called a customer health checkup. We put together a survey for you. We put together the emails that you send out. We tabulate everything. All you have to do is send the 3 emails to your merchants. One wanted to add a question about, how important is local service to you? He found a big chunk of his customers, unless it was a dire emergency, they really didn't care as much about him, like 40, 50% of his customers. And so you can take that 2 ways in terms of, oh my gosh, panic in the streets. They don't care about what I'm offering. But then there's also, but there's a lot of people who do. And so you've got to make sure you find the people who actually value that. And they're not just talking about price. And so what we found is, again, through the eyes and ears of our members, the really small, less sophisticated merchants, they might be fine with, because it's a very simple operation. They don't need the local support. They don't need the local service. They don't need a very tailored solution. And so don't be going after those people, right? If you have some of them, that's fine. What we've seen is VARs offer them a lower end product, and fine, but that's not going to be where your margin is. You've got to look for those niches. You've got to look and go upline. If you want to go upline, you have to get more sophisticated. You can't just be a box mover and think that because I'm local, right? I'm a local box mover too. You've got to provide something special. And if that merchant doesn't value the special sauce that you're offering, you better go find some other merchants that do that. So again, with the KPI study that we just did, some of the open-ended feedback that we had was, I'm no longer just specializing in restaurants. I'm only focusing on quick service or fine dining or, certain slices of it because they want to be a specialist in that area. You can't just say, hey, I know I do exactly what these other 800 numbers do, but I'm local. It's got to be something more than that because some percent, they, all they care about is price, but you've got to go and find those folks who value what you're offering.
Rick, you started in 1997. Technology was very different then. Are you surprised that the survey came back that 50% of the customers did not value local support?
One of the things I learned early on was to educate your buyer and to educate your customer, right? And so before getting to that survey question, we would make sure that we sort of plant the seed of value of local support and make sure that they understand that we're their trusted advisor and that if anything happens, because, they said, 50% of them said, unless it was an absolute crisis.
Correct.
When your business is down and you can't ring sales, that's an absolute crisis. I've had plenty of customers in that spot. So I think that's all wrapped up in that trusted advisor thing that we talked about when we started on. And Jim is the host of the Trusted Advisor podcast for the RSPA. So nice plug there. And I'll take your $20 under the table, Jim. But thinking back to that, and it was only about 1998, 1999, where I had a retail customer who was a model train shop of all things, the wash, dry, fold type thing, right? It's very niche market there. And it was an older operator. And so we had installed point of sale, and he was not 100% on board with everything, but he started understanding this is a good thing for my business. I now know my inventory, right? I know these things. And in the beginning, his credit cards were an outside company. It was not tied to the point of sale. It was a Zon terminal. And he had a model train store upstairs and a toy store downstairs that were separate businesses. And they had one of those payment terminals in each location, and if on the same phone line. So if the phone line was busy and they're trying to do a credit card, it didn't work. So we came in and we said, we can now get DSL at this location. We have our friends at Mercury Payment Systems at the time, and we went ahead and installed that, over high speed. And so the long story long is that I went in around Christmas time and I asked the owner, I said, hey, Chris, what's the story? I'm like, how has it changed? Has anything changed? And he's like, I don't know. We're having a terrible year. And I got down to it and I basically said, why do you think you're having a terrible year? Have you gone in and looked at your year over year sales? He's like, no, I just know. I've done this for 40 years, right? And what he was going by was the line. Right. The line at Christmas time goes all the way back to that counter and halfway across the back of the store. And this year it only goes to the middle of that counter. I said, well, let's go look at numbers. And we looked at numbers. And from the period October 1 to about December 13th, I think was when I was in there, he was up 27% that year. And that was when I said, I need to figure out how to become a consultant, how to become a trusted advisor, because telling that story to people got them to understand that some of those people that were standing in the back of that store were never a customer. They never bought anything. They walked out because they didn't want to stand in that line.
I take away, that's a solid point. I also think of what you said earlier about kind of keeping the fire to grow. And that scenario there, he was 27% up. He could have been happy, but through an indicator that was not accurate, he had the fire. Yeah. He wanted to keep pushing. Yeah. How do you think VARs or individuals that have been in the space for a long time that are doing well, how do they relight the fire?
One is my old boss used to say, I like having my problems in front of me, not clawing me down from behind like a tiger in the jungle, right? And so those who are with that productive paranoia, thinking like those who have paid attention to the change and they know that things can change every 5 or 10 years or sometimes faster than that is in this industry, some of them are just making sure they're running and doing that. Some other ones, what they want to do, and this is, I think, the most common thing that we see is they want to build a business that's super valuable, that they have the option of selling, or there's a lot of family businesses inside of the RSPA. They want to have something really built up that they can hand off to their kids. I've only run into one who's basically said, hey, I'm near the end of retirement. I'm not into getting, changes and things of that nature. And so he was just like, I'm going to ride it out and then eventually I'm going to cash this thing in. But the vast majority of folks, somebody said to me, this used to be a dealer organization and Retail Now used to be a dealer show. They hadn't been to Retail Now in 7 years. They just went to this past one. Like, this is a technology show. This is a technology association. And I think if you get that kind of group, you get the value-added resellers who've survived the past 10 years or so, they're the ones who are constantly looking for, how can I serve my customers better? How can I build up a better business model? As opposed to, I'm just going to do the same thing I did last year, sell it the same way to the same people. And recurring revenue really started that. I'm thinking it was 2012, back when I was at Business Solutions, where we really started talking about recurring revenue beyond payments in this space. And I think you saw a lot of folks who at that point didn't say, that's different, that's old, I don't want to do it. I want to stick to what I'm doing. Those folks, most of them aren't around anymore, but the folks, they keep their fire lit by, it's almost kind of what's in them. And then they surround themselves, right, being in this community with other folks who are looking for, how can I get better? How can I serve better? If you looked around and it was just a lifestyle bunch of dealers, you look around and go, I'm okay, I don't need to push. You look around now with the folks who are VARs or these direct independent software developers, if you're sitting still, they're going to be moving past you. So again, getting back to that iron sharpens iron, the community really helps from a momentum standpoint. There's part that's internal. There's also part you look to your left, you look to your right. Other people are trying new things. You can kind of copy off that, but you also make sure I got to do something, right? I cannot just sit still for any period of time. That I say is the biggest difference, where before people would say resellers are really reluctant to change. The folks now, I think they're very much open to change. And sometimes they take on too much or they try to do too many things. That's a way different mindset from what it was before. And I've always said I would rather have an employee working for me or be affiliated with a company that I have to say, whoa, slow down, not so fast, rather than, hey, come on, let's get moving, let's do something. I'd rather have that. And I think that's a spot they're in right now from a VAR standpoint.
Having your fire lit is something hard to maintain for everybody. Mm-hmm. In this space, you've talked a lot about technology. From a true dealer perspective or VAR, do you think the opportunity is still as strong for a younger generation to come in that has not served technology before, become a dealer of some of these independent software vendors you're talking about?
I think it's even stronger, to be honest with you, because before the business model wasn't super challenging because you were just, hey, I have this logo on my shirt representing whichever software or hardware software provider, and that's what I do. But now you can really be a technology company. You can shape and take it any way that you want. Do you want to focus on this niche vertical or these two niche verticals? Or do you want to sell these other services that go around it? I've said, and this is in the KPI study, people are always talking about channel sustainability and where the next era of VARs, where's it going to come from? Look around the room, there's a lot of gray-haired people in here. Like that was always a thing at Retail Now. And people would talk about, oh, what we have to do is more shorter YouTube videos and get on TikTok and things of that nature. And it's like, yeah, but that's just like the icing on the cake, right? What folks want to have is like what you talked about. A real entrepreneur says, is this something that could be exciting, that I can grow, that I have some agency, I can make changes with it? That's now the model of a value-added reseller or MSP, if you want to call them that, or the DISD, direct independent software developer. That's what I find exciting, and that's the folks who we met at Inspire. 25% of the attendees at Inspire were first-time attendees to that event.
Including myself.
Yes, yeah. And so to have folks like Tonic in the industry, to have folks like yourself in the industry, folks are looking around and going, oh, the future is here, right? This next generation is here. And why are you here? Because you see the opportunity in the space. And it's not just a promise. You can, again, look to your left and look to your right and go, wow, that person's really successful. I worked in a small business office, and so I had people around me. There were some counselors who were in there, some insurance people, things of that nature. The counselors and the psychotherapists, I remember saying to them, like, wow, you got to work every hour to make money. When you're not working, you're not making money. Now, people can look at our industry now as a VAR and go, oh, I don't have to work 70 hours a week in order to make money. I can figure out how to build this model, make it recurring, make it grow, and I can make money essentially round the clock. And so I think that is incredibly enticing because so many things are moving to the subscription model. We're all paying a lot for subscription. If you can be on the receiving end of that, like all of us in the room are, right? And in those terms, and a lot of our members are, that is a sustainable business model. So that's why I think we see a younger generation. We just did the RSPA Rising Stars last year, the Next Gen 40 Under 40, which you made the list. You were ineligible. You and I aged out of that a long, long time ago.
Long ineligible in some cases.
Assuming if we were under 40, we'd definitely be.
Yeah, you guys would be in. I guarantee.
Yeah, definitely.
60 under 60.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna get the.
Are you doing a 60 under 60?
No, we were talking about doing 100 over 100 as science gets better and better. So I'm hoping to make that list. But when we first did that list, I don't think 10 years ago you could have done that inside of the association. This year we did that, and we had to turn people away. We had a lot of worthy candidates that we did not put in that top 40 list because there is a long, long list. We're doing nominations for that again this year. The list is even longer for us to consider. And so that, again, I see that as a value of, or recognizing the value of what this industry has to offer for young up-and-coming entrepreneurs.
Rick, you were an entrepreneur who started in the space before recurring revenues really existed to what they are today. You obviously help a lot of people join Tonic as a product and represent that knowledge, but is it something that you would do?
Coming back to that whole, people starting in the industry younger and things like that. I was 23 when I started my business. It started as I come from the tech side, right? I was not in sales. So I was an MCSE. I ran Fortune 500 networks and stuff like that at 22 and 23. And when I started my business, it was really to provide those type of services, network and technical services, technical support to small and medium businesses. I got into point of sale completely by accident, like so many. Everybody's got a story about how they accidentally got into point of sale and then into payments. But I think that the big difference now, my first year in the room at RSPA at Retail Now would have been 2004 timeframe. And what I noticed there was I was still the young guy in the room. But what I noticed with a lot of the VARs, they were second generation businesses that were cash register businesses that maybe latched on to one of the huge early big point of sales. And the difference there is, I'm not going to say people weren't hungry, but the reality is they were order takers. They were getting phone calls. I need a system, come put it in, right? As far as not having to go out on the street and fight for that business. And so when I started with a much smaller point of sale in the hospitality world, we had to go fight on the street for business. And so that kind of led to the getting into the credit card side of things, converting the business to as a service, and that recurring revenue. So I think, I won't say it's any easier today than it was then. There's all kinds of market things going on and different competitors that are out there. But ultimately, yes, you can come into a market with a product like Tonic where you can put it together with all of these recurring revenue things and build that MSP trusted advisor business to these local businesses. I think the easier part today is you don't have to be worried so much as you grow your business about going out there and getting those $20 and $30 and $40,000 one-time checks from a business. Though they were nice in my day, it injected some real capital into the business. But it's much better to have that recurring revenue building over time because you don't have to worry about that. That's one thing you take off your plate.
I'll add to that. I'll quote two resellers. One said when he shifted from, like you said, those giant deals to the recurring revenue model, he said, I used to be a sprinter. Now I run marathons. I used to try to get as much as I can up front. And then once that thing was done, it was done. I had to move on to something else. But he said, now I get the deal and I just keep adding over time. And another one said, I sell a lot of little, right? He used to sell a little of giant deals, but now they sell a lot of little. And it's hard to get started, right? The first 5-10 years, it's really hard to build that up. But once you build that up, I can tell the folks who have fully transitioned to recurring revenue business model because they're more relaxed. They're able to attend an event. They're able to stay an extra day. They're able to look into new things of their business as opposed to scramble, all project work, putting out fires. To me, that's more important than maybe anything, right? Like, what are we in business for? Like, what happens if you just run yourself into the ground and you make some money? In the end, you run yourself into the ground, right? But if you can scramble and build something up and build something for everybody in your organization that they can provide great service. I'm reading a book on my flight here called Unreasonable Hospitality. You provide incredible service to folks and not have to break your neck doing it. Like, man, that is great. And be able to take care of your employees. Like, that to me is great. And that's what I really like to see when we come to these at the RSPA events and get to hear stories of folks who used to say, man, I used to do this 60, 70 hours a week and have this really thin margins. Now I'm able to really run a business the way I want to run a business. And then they're making better margins. That to me is true success.
Well said. I think that is what a lot of us aspire to be able to have, a little bit of free time for ourselves and our family, and just that peace. Peace is, I think, what often we're chasing, and recurring revenues brings certainly a level of peace.
For sure, 100%.
I think one of the subjects at Inspire that was very helpful for everyone was cash discounting, dual sticker pricing, how the industry is approaching it. Order Counter, Thomas, the CEO over there, asked a really great question. He said, can we take a position, can RSPA actually take a position with Visa to really protect our industry? And is that something that's possible?
There's a few things. So one is, again, we're more of a networking association. We're not as much as like an industry lobbying advocacy, things of that nature. And so we don't quite know how to navigate that. And so one thing he brought up is partnering with some of the larger organizations like the NRA, National Restaurant Association. They say buns, not guns. So it's the NRA, the Restaurant Association, the NGA, National Grocers Association, and the National Retail Federation. And so we've been efforting to try to connect with those folks. So if there is somebody here listening,
so you responded to that.
Well,
ask.
We've been trying to work with some of those associations for a long time. We are partners with the NRF. We help them promote their food service innovation zone that they just had this year at NRF. We have a great relationship with them on the event side, but there's this whole other lobbying side. And again, the NRA and the NGA, we've been trying to work with them because the RSPA, again, the value that we have is we're a small niche organization. But from a lobbying standpoint, they don't see that as a valuable. You're small and niche, right? They want those big folks. So we would love to be able to engage with some of those larger organizations and let them understand some of those things, like you said, the cash discounting, and actually see what kind of influence we can have on that now. So that's our plan in order to do that, because RSPA just knocking on somebody's door, from an influence, industry influence standpoint, we influence a channel in a big way, but the general, like influencing the visas or things of that nature, that's more difficult for us to do. The other thing is, and this puts us at risk, is if you noticed, and you probably saw Jill Miller, who's our on-staff attorney, our general counsel, RSPA will not put out any position statements on cash discounting. You should do this. You should not do this. We keep referring folks back to the source documents, because it's tricky legal ground, right? And you do not want to get in the middle of that. So that's why we want to, like the goals that we're talking about and protecting that, we would love to be able to do that. We just have to navigate that in the right way in order to do it. And we're trying, and we're going to keep knocking on the door, and we're very persistent with those bigger associations. And hopefully one of them will be listening to this, and we can engage with them and maybe move forward on that.
I mean, it's tricky and it's ever evolving, right? Day by day.
Right. You do not want to put out a statement that says, here's what you should do with cash discounting, because in a week the guidance could change. So it's better to point folks back, the solution providers back towards Visa and the other sources to say, here's what they are saying, and follow those.
Cash discounting has been a revenue generator, a source of those $50,000 large installs. Cash discounting has infused a lot of businesses with the ability to compete against the larger industries that are subsidizing cost. And this is happening not only in restaurant, but retail and other spaces, all the way down to automotive. I'm seeing it at my tax accountant as well now. As you're reaching out to these associations, you've named a few. Have you guys expanded beyond retail and hospitality, going into municipalities who are also doing this, trying to just grab as many associations to try and get a position with Visa?
So we haven't done that. We tend to stay really in our niches of retail, restaurant, grocery, cannabis. We work with a lot of cannabis associations, but anything beyond that, there's almost like they don't see quite the value in us being a niche. We don't quite see the value in them being broad, so we haven't done that. Now we've expanded relationships where we used to only have 3 media or association relationships. I think we're at 24 or 25 here in 2024. So we've expanded, but it has been all within, again, retail, restaurant, and grocery in those niches.
That's fantastic growth that you guys are doing that now. It's just cash discounting is not just in our space. It is something
correct.
That is impacted across and really been adopted everywhere, and for a good reason. I think that it has infused a lot of cash into those business sectors where they've been able to bring bigger solutions to the table, or better solutions to the table. I look forward to you guys helping us have a strong position in the future. And Jill's guidance was really great at Inspire.
Jill's on top of it. Like, Jill has tons of years as a payments attorney, so she really knows, I'd say, the inside and out of it. And she also knows what VARs and ISOs are going through, and then she can point folks to getting the right answer. There's a way to make money at this and do it the right way at the same time. There are some merchants who want to color outside the lines, and so the VARs, have to make sure they're staying inside the lines and they're able to make money. You can do both. It's harder to do, but it can be done, and it's worth doing.
Well, the ones outside the lines are certainly starting to feel it.
Yes, eventually you're going to get caught, right? Eventually you're going to, pay for the sins of your past.
One of the values of the RSPA, bringing that knowledge to the table, and I certainly felt it when we were there.
Absolutely. Looking ahead, what are the key goals and directions of the RSPA, and how do you think you'll be able to achieve them?
So we have a goal of attaining 1,000 member companies. We're at about 750 right now. We continue to grow every year, have net gains every year, bring on new member companies. But the 1,000 has to be the 1,000 right folks. I always said it when I was hiring, and people say it's taking too long to hire because we're very selective in terms of who we hire. I'm like, I can fill all our hiring goals right now. I'll take my pickup truck down in the unemployment office. We need 6 people. Hop in the truck, and we have the 6. But they're not going to be the right people for this. So we want to grow to have 1,000 member companies, but it has to be the right member companies. High initiative, growth-oriented, focusing on the verticals that I've talked about during this. We also want to make sure that we still can provide, we talked about personal service earlier. We do not want to resemble in any way one scintilla of bureaucracy. We deal with small businesses. Other small businesses like dealing with other small businesses because, right, you pick up the phone, you talk to a human. You want to send an email, you send an email to a human, and a human responds, right? Not just some generic, person, or it's next in the queue or something like that, right? It is that personal service. So we want to make sure we're growing and doing it in a measured way, that we can always provide that niche value proposition and that we always provide that personal service. So it is not growth for growth's sake. It's growth to serve our members. Like I said earlier, the value of the RSPA is the community. And if we're at 750 right now, we had 250 more members, however long that's going to take, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, at the right pace, that's going to make the current 750, it's going to make their membership, do the math, 33% more valuable, because they have way more folks to lean on, way more folks to learn from. But it's got to be the right people. If you get folks in the association who aren't a fit whatsoever, they're only going to churn for 1 year, right? They're not going to see the fit. And other people are going to be like, do I really belong in this group? It's so great. We just had an ISV, somebody who has done channel sales, but they just joined a retail-oriented organization. They found us through our KPI study online. They reached out and said, hey, we're looking for some retail VARs. Could you guys possibly point us in the right direction? We're like, that's what we do, right? That's what we do. But if somebody said, I'm looking for healthcare VARs, I'd say, go talk to CompTIA, or go talk to somebody else like that. Go talk to the ASCII group. That's not what we do. We focus on our niches there. So we have that goal of growth, but again, we want to make sure we have that personal touch and make sure we have that niche.
Inspire this year, Puerto Rico. Where is it next year?
Curacao.
I haven't been there. I'm certainly going to go because I got a lot out of Inspire this year. I really enjoyed attending. Have you been many years?
I have. I've been at Inspire since about 2006 or 7 maybe. And the thing I've seen over the years, it's transitioned into a much bigger event. But more importantly, it's the education sessions. It was always, you always made a lot of connections at Inspire. And I've told people stories where there's somebody in a business that I just didn't know and wanted to get to know them. And I used Inspire for that. It's very easy to grab somebody and sit down in the lobby for a few minutes. What I think is incredible about what you guys have done with Inspire is it's grown to this much bigger event, but it really feels like it always did. Maybe it's because you're in a nice warm climate, but I think there's really something to the connections you make at Inspire versus some of the bigger shows.
Yeah, when you go to a trade show, we say you get business cards, right? You stop by a booth, you bump into somebody, you talk for a few minutes, you exchange cards, and you go from there. But Inspire, we had 240 record attendance this year, but they're together Sunday night at the welcome reception, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning at the education sessions. There's also some networking things in the afternoon. And so you get to see folks again and again. You can really build those relationships, and you can sit down and have a full lunch with somebody, or a full breakfast, or sit down by the pool or during the breaks or something like that. And so the way that I have to give Kathy Mead, our VP of Education Services, a lot of credit here, from an educational standpoint, she works with our members and our education committee about what are the most important topics. And then you can go see a YouTube video on any one of those topics, or you can go to an event and listen to somebody speak about it. But we kind of spark the conversation and then turn it over to the group to have these workshops with one another, which is another opportunity if you get to know other people and work with other people. And that's kind of the special sauce of what Inspire is. No matter how big it continues to get, if we keep having folks break out into those small groups and work together and talk about industry topics, they get to meet other people, they get to learn them even more, they get to learn new things. And then we hand off the microphone and people can say, whatever they want. Makes me a little nervous as a show organizer, what they're going to say, potentially. But it's always been incredibly valuable information. And people walk out of there each day going, I couldn't get that anywhere else. Like nothing else has quite that mix of individuals. We had somebody who was a first-time attendee a couple of years ago who said, this event's great. Everybody can answer my question. They don't have to say, well, I got to go check up line, right? Because it's folks who are aspiring leaders or current executives. So again, you get the Jim Collins, you get the right people, you put them on the right seats. For us, you get the right people, you put them in the right venue, you get them in that educational, talking about the right topics and working with each other. I've always said Inspire's a magical event. I said that even before the RSPA started paying me to say that. But now we have members telling us that they felt it was magical. It's like nothing else they've ever been to before. So I'm glad you had a great experience, and I'm glad that you continue to see we try to make it better and better every year.
Well, Jim, I want to thank you for your time here today. It's been extremely valuable. I think we could probably sit around this table and chat all day long about the industry, about the history. We can talk about history for 10 years here. But I want to thank you for your time. It's been very insightful.
Well, thanks for having me. And again, I'm just here sharing the collective wisdom of our members. I'm very fortunate to be part of a great team. We have a small but mighty team of 10 employees in the RSPA. We work all together very well. And then I'm blessed to be part of such a generous community where folks who don't know the RSPA or don't experience the RSPA, they're stunned how folks will open up and help each other with, instead of drawing a bunch of lines and saying, you're a competitor, or why should I help you? It's really a community of retail technology solution providers helping other retail technology solution providers. So thanks for having me here. I'm always happy to represent the RSPA.
Yeah, an important thing here is that there's probably people watching this who are not members, don't know about the organization. How do people get involved?
Go to our website at gorspa.org. We are a nonprofit, so gorspa.org, and you can email membership@gorspa.org, and we will be in touch with you and happy to see if it's the right fit. That's the other thing. If somebody isn't the right fit for our market, well, then we probably won't ask them to join. We're happy to take anybody's money, but we won't take somebody's money if they're not the right fit. So we're happy to talk and see if it works out.
Excellent. And if you want to learn more about grit and perseverance, I'm going to help Jim plug his book. So tell us just a couple seconds about the walk-on.
I'm the author of 2 books. The first is Hire Like You Just Beat Cancer. I am a now 22-year colon cancer survivor, and that talked about how that experience taught me about the value of having a great team, because I had to be pulled out of the organization for almost a year for chemo and surgery and everything like that. And you realize, boy, really got to hire the right people because you can't be everywhere all the time. And then my latest book is called The Walk-On Method to Career and Business Success, 31 Underdogs Who Became Extraordinary. A walk-on is somebody who plays on a college athletics team with a bunch of other folks on athletic scholarships. They do not have an athletic scholarship. And so I had that experience. And what I learned from that is what I've applied to my professional career. I applied it to my cancer battle as well. And so I had the idea, what if I talked to 5 or 10 former walk-ons and see how they succeeded professionally, not in sports, but either, as a consultant or a doctor or a minister or an attorney or things like that. I talked to 5, they had great stories. I talked to 10, they had great stories. I got all the way up to 30, and then I shared mine. And so the book is available on Amazon. I try to say it's the best $9.99 you'll ever spend in your life, but I say that because it was so great when I interviewed these walk-ons. I'm always thinking, I'm going to get a lame story or this one isn't going to be good. Every time I'm shaking my head like, this is so good. It's so helpful. And it's helped lots and lots of people realize the keys to success, right? It's not luck. It's not genius. It's the grit. It's the perseverance. It's finding your passion and never giving up. And that's what the walk-on method's all about. So thanks for plugging the book.
Yeah, I would say personally, if you hire people, Hire Like You Just Beat Cancer needs to be on your list. If you're a human being who breathes air, the walk-on method, that is a book for everybody. I've bought that for my kids. It's an important read.
Yeah, we're inspired by other stories. It wakes us up in the morning. It motivates us. In this world, I'm always trying to find, how do I keep that fire lit? We talked about it today. And you didn't plug it earlier, but it sounds like you have a good way for people to keep their fire lit when you hear these walk-on stories.
For sure. And that is the truth. When you do read these walk-on stories, you do realize how attainable success is. It's not, the world this or the world that. And to tie them with the RSPA, we had some VARs who said, I don't know if I can make it. This is too hard. But they come to our event, they work with some of our other members, they learn from them. Wow, this person's really succeeding and having a better life and they're making more money, right? And they have a successful business. I can be like them as well. I agree with you 100%. Hanging out with successful people and finding out what makes them tick, right? That is helpful because then you can run it through a filter and see what you can apply to your life.